All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to give us just a moment or two to make sure we get everybody from the waiting room in. But welcome to our discussion day on hidden curriculum and doc programs. We're so excited to have you. If you'll give us just a moment or two, we will get started here shortly. All right, about 60 more seconds and then we will get underway for our webinar today. And then people can join as they're able. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. I want to respect the time of our wonderful panelist members and everybody that signed up to join us today. So first, welcome to our first webinar in the webinar series that I have developed for DAD for students and early career professionals. Our topic today is on hidden curriculum and doc programs. So hoping that this pertains to you as you did sign up for it. This will be recorded. So if for some reason, I know a couple people reached out saying that they had to leave a minute or two early, or people are going to be coming in late, I will be recording this webinar from the permission of our panelists, and it will be accessible online through DAD's YouTube channel, which also has some great resources if you haven't checked it out already, such as some short clips for evidence-based practices, some other webinars that our DEI and diversity committees have put on and things of that nature. So feel free to check out this resource after the webinar ends today. But otherwise, I'm going to have us jump right in. Feel free to use the chat at any point if you need. Our panelist and myself will be moderating the chat. For whoever's not speaking at any given time, feel free to put things in there as needed. I'm going to go over our agenda and then go directly into introductions. So first, I'll start off with introductions today. Then I'm going to define hidden curriculum for everybody here so you can kind of see how we're framing the topic of discussion today, as well as these three bucket topics that we're going to specifically talk about, mainly our panelists going into depth with their own personal experiences across those three bucket topic areas. Then we'll have discussion where we have had some voting occur from those that have registered for questions that you guys wanted prioritized to the panelists. And then time permitting, I'm going to open the floor to the members of the audience to see if you guys have any additional questions that you would like to ask to our panelist members. And without further ado, I do want to introduce everybody. So I am Deidre Gilley. There are a lot of familiar faces and names on the Zoom today. So I just want to say welcome to everybody. I am the DAD student representative. I'm on year 2 of 2. So at the end of this academic year, or at the end of this 2023 year, I will be handing off my position to another student representative. So one of the parts of my role is to provide ongoing supports for student members, but I also I'm starting to transition to the job market for my career field. So I'm starting to identify as that early career as well. So I came up with this 4-part series for DAD to talk about some topic areas that are very specific to students and early career professionals. I'm at Florida State University. I'm in my third year 4, hoping to graduate next May. I'm going to very briefly just mention who is on our panel today, and then I'm going to hand it over to each of them for them to share a little bit more about themselves so you can see where they come from and the experiences that they're bringing to the table today. We have Dr. Cox, who is a previous Florida State graduate. She is currently at Eastern Michigan University. Then we have Dr. Bross, who's an assistant professor at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And then we have Dr. Bhana at NIAC. I'm going to have her say that so I don't butcher it as well.
Niagara University, like Niagara Falls.
Perfect, thank you. And she is an assistant professor there. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our panelists so each of them can introduce ourselves, and then we're going to jump into our topics for today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. As Deidre mentioned, my name is Sarah Cox. I graduated from Florida State in 2019. Before then, I earned my master's degree in educational leadership from the University of South Carolina. And before that, I graduated from Illinois State with a BS in elementary ed. And then I was a middle school math teacher for many years. So my research really focuses on inclusive practices for students with ASD, specifically at the middle school grades for math. So how we are working with them to use that mathematical reasoning. And at the top are several of the children in my life that really drive my desire to make public education in particular more equitable. So those are my kids, my nieces, and my goddaughter.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Leslie Bross, and I'm at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I graduated from the University of Kansas in 2019. So I've successfully completed the reappointment process and will be going up for tenure in 2 years. And so, yeah, time goes by quickly after your doctoral program and training. So my research focuses on supporting individuals with autism during their transition to adulthood in the areas of competitive integrated employment, post-secondary education, and community integration. Some current studies that I'm currently working on, I'm supporting 4 young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities during their regular lunch sessions to improve their conversation skills with same-age peers without disabilities. And then previous studies related to transportation and travel skills, and so as well as community-based instruction. So some of my earlier studies as a doctoral student focused on employment, but then as early career faculty, I've kind of branched out to all these adult outcomes for individuals with autism and have done a couple other studies on community integration and post-secondary education. So when I'm not reading and writing, yeah, I love to go hiking in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, swimming and Zumba dance and coffee. And these are some doctoral students at UNC Charlotte and other faculty members. And then that's a young adult with autism with whom I've worked before on a study. So really try and center the voices of individuals with autism with whom I work in my studies. So yeah, looking forward to our time together today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Naima Bhana. Similar to Dr. Bross and Dr. Cox, I also work with individuals with autism, but mostly I work with their families. I do parent implemented interventions and caregiver implemented interventions, focusing on, to FSU grads, I know, I was gonna say. I focus on caregivers and families from historically minoritized backgrounds. I have some pictures here, as you can see. I have my family. I have a picture of me as an undergrad at Florida State, where I got my undergrad and my master's in 2013. And I am a recent PhD grad from Penn State University, which I got in 2021. I was a pandemic PhD person. Some things that I included here as well is some of my positionality, where I come from, because I feel like that affects a lot of how I've approached academia and how the hidden curriculum has affected me. I'm a first generation college student. I am an immigrant. I'm originally from Panama. I speak Spanish. That's my first language. I am Latina and Indian. So there's a lot of different competing, expectations of how to work with people that have a position of power. So I've had to kind of relearn that a little bit. I was raised as a Muslim, and I also getting more comfortable disclosing that I also have OCD, which also puts me sometimes in this different, we are the people that we're researching kind of place. So I'm really excited to be here and talk to you a little bit about my experiences.
All right, so I do just want to give a special shout out to everybody that is on our 3 panelists. Thank you for the work that you put in to make this webinar happen today. I know myself and everybody in attendance is very excited to learn from your experiences and to apply it in our own doctoral programs, or maybe share as we move forward beyond our doc programs into early career to support other doc students. But thank you for your time and support to make this webinar happen. Without you 3, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you. So defining early curriculum in the scope of talking about it today. Hidden curriculum can be messages that you are receiving that you may or may not be aware of. It refers to a collection of unwritten rules or unspoken expectations. It can include unofficial norms or behaviors or values of the context for us. And today's discussion, that's within doctoral programs. So some of the things that we're going to discuss today, you might already know, you might not know, you might know it, but not realize you know it. So those are kind of the areas that we're trying to talk about today. The 3 topic buckets that we're going to have include work-life balance, developing yourself as a scholar, and then being trained as a critical thinker. Each of our panelists are going to talk on each one of these topic bucket areas. And then at the end, we're going to have time for that discussion and questions. But to facilitate discussion, I'm going to put a Jamboard link in the chat. Feel free to go to this Jamboard link and it will look like this. And as we are on each part of these buckets today, go to the Jamboard slide that aligns with it. So for example, our first topic bucket, that workplace balance, if any questions come up while any of our panelists are speaking and you don't want to throw it in the Zoom chat, but you'd like to put it on a sticky note or a text box, throw it on this Jamboard, and this can help facilitate discussion at the end of our webinar today. But it also can help our panelists see where some other questions are arising, some misconceptions or some concerns that you guys would like to potentially further discuss with our panelists at the end of today. So if you would go to that at the top, for those that are not familiar with Jamboard, there are left and right arrows that you can switch between the slides. If you have something other that's outside of these 3 buckets, feel free to add that question there to the last slide. And then all you have to do is select either a sticky note or a text box, and it'll pop up on your screen where you can type it in and throw it on there to support discussion later. Otherwise, we're going to jump right into that first topic bucket of work-life balance by handing it over to Dr. Cox.
Okay, so I will start with the disclosure that this was the concept, this balance concept that I personally struggled with the most my entire time in my doc program. I entered the doc program as a mother of 2 small children, one of whom is on the autism spectrum. He had recently been diagnosed, so I was going through all of that and learning at the same time. And I was getting very mixed messages about what balance looked like in a doc program. So far as I had a faculty member tell me that there was no such thing as balance and that this was basically just sacrifice for however many years it took, and I needed to be okay with that. So with that being said, I think the things that I realized that helped me, and I wish I would have known looking back now, is that I really needed to understand myself and what my needs were and stop worrying so much about what everybody else around me was doing. So other people were setting boundaries in terms of their weekends were their time, or they couldn't do certain things, or what was most important to them. And I needed to figure out what my things were and what was okay with me. And it was perfectly fine that it was not the same as everyone else's. Secondly, as a, millennial woman in particular, and a former athlete and some other things, idiosyncrasies, I have a perfectionism streak. And so I wanted to do everything, and not only do everything, I wanted to do everything perfectly. And it took me some time to realize that it was okay to ask for help, that I needed to ask for help, that the only way to really make it through was to express that I needed something, and that other people were doing that to me, and I knew how that was making me feel. So I tried to kind of practice what I preached. And then last but not least, I would say really take some time to reflect. You get so in the grind of things and so worried about what you're doing and not doing, and you're analyzing yourself and what's working well and what's not. But if you really dedicate some time to stop and reflect on what worked well, what would you potentially do differently the next time? Be proud of yourself for things that you've accomplished. It's really important and can be very impactful. And my last little piece of advice is treat yourself the same way that you would treat other people. We tend to be much harder on ourselves than we are others. And so if you would give somebody else some grace in that moment, then try to do the same for yourself.
Those are great, Dr. Cox. I would agree, and kind of knowing oneself. I'm a really social person and really energized by being around other people. And I think that is sometimes a common characteristic for teachers. And so my first year, my doctoral program, I really struggled transitioning, being a busy classroom teacher. I used to teach high school students with autism, walking all around my school building each day, interacting with students with autism and their families and other teachers, to then like going to class and listening and writing and spending a lot of time by myself and this kind of solitary nature. And so now as more time has gone on, and I've adjusted better to academia life, I see that there is a balance of, there's some times of solitude and deep thinking and writing, paired with an opportunity such as this or coffee with friends. And I'm able, to kind of balance that a little bit more. But my first year, my doctoral program, that I had a really tough transition from being this, busy classroom teacher to kind of transitioning to being, a scholar and reading and thinking a lot more. So yeah, my first point is that you matter. Doctoral student life and academia is your job. That's the same, for me now. Although you are developing an academic identity, it's not every aspect of your life. So it's important to foster, these other aspects of your life. It's also really important to take care of your mental health. You can't be of any service to anyone else, people with autism or colleagues, if you're not taking care of yourself. And one way that, can help take care of yourself is having clear communication and clear boundaries. And I talk about this in my undergrad classes too. So special education has high turnover rate. And so for my undergrad classes that I teach, I have it clearly written in my course syllabi, that I respond to email within 24 to 48 regular business hours, not on weekends. And so, if you message me Friday afternoon at 5:30, I won't respond back until Monday at 8. And so even if I check it on my own private time, my students don't necessarily need to know that. I'll purposefully not write back, or I'll do the scheduled response that I'll schedule it for Monday at 8 o'clock. So, and then we talk about that, and I say, did you feel taken care of this semester? I still responded and met your needs and still communicated, but then I did that within regular business hours. So I really do try and unplug on Saturdays. And I find if I don't, I'm a little bit more running on empty throughout the week. So I really do a lot better when I do have at least one full day of the weekend where I rest and unplug them and not on technology. So similar to clear communication with students, also communicate clearly with colleagues. Colleagues and I decide on, shared projects together. They kind of know my routines and habits. And then don't be afraid to use the out of office automatic email response. I don't think she would mind me saying this. One of my mentors is Dr. Valerie Mazzotti, and she has really funny ones. She'll be like, Val is planting tomatoes. She's gone. I mean, she's one of the most prolific scholars in the field of transition, and she unplugs from email sometimes when she's doing grant writing and other things because it just takes up so much time. So those, I hope those kind of concrete examples help for how you can set clear boundaries so that you can do that deep thinking and, be your best, most productive self. Yeah. Don't tell Val I telling all her planting tomato secrets when she's out of the office. So thanks.
I am going to echo a lot of the things already said, but the first one, remember, it's just a job. It's very hard to do when you are in the middle of it, right? Because you probably moved away. Some of us left our country. Some of us left our cities and our families. So it becomes part of our identity. This project, this dissertation, we have to do this, we have to finish it. But at the end of the day, it's just part of it. And for me, a lot of what has helped me kept that in focus throughout my dissertation and after that, now as an assistant professor, is having things to do outside of work and having non-academic friends and keeping in touch with them and visiting them, because they help you, remember what it's like to not have to worry about a job or emails 24/7, right? Because it's always kind of in the back of our heads, I feel like. So that has helped me a lot, just hanging out with non-academic people as well as my academic friends. Like, I value them a lot, but having those friendships and still like talking to teachers, talking to my friends that are still teachers, those that are still in the classroom, um, and getting away, similar related to that, finding time to leave the space. And I feel like that for me and my partner, who's also an academic, for us, that is really helpful to just leave our city or just leave our home and go somewhere on vacation or just go somewhere for the weekend. That helps you kind of like, I notice every time I do that, when I come back, I am rested. I can see things clearly. Talking about hobbies, we talk about a lot how people that like running or just going on walks or sometimes even long drives. If you're working on a paper, right, and you can't figure it out, sometimes just going on that drive or going on that walk or going on that run, it clicks. Your brain kind of like, I don't know, it just does this thing where it makes those connections and it helps you see a different way rather than you just staying in your computer. So those things I think are really important. And I'm going to echo what you said about having at least 24 hours a day on the weekend, even if it's like Friday afternoon to Saturday afternoon. That's what I used to do my doc program, where I didn't do anything work related. I went out with my friends. I cooked, I baked, I did different things just to have that, thing that it's not work, that it's not, academia, it's not reading, it's not something I have to do. It really helps you, focus on different things and helps you and your mental health, because it helps you realize you're more than this program, you're more than your job. So those are my suggestions for this. So we're moving on to the next bucket.
All right, thank you for sharing on our first topic about work-life balance. Just a reminder, the link that I shared, Dr. Cox will share it again right now. If you have any questions about that specific topic area, go to that Jamboard, throw those questions in, and that'll help facilitate our discussion at the end. You are also more than welcome to throw them in the chat, and we can put them on the Jamboard for you. But we're going to transition to our second topic area by handing it over to Dr. Bross first about developing yourself as a scholar.
Yay. Thank you, Deidre. So I didn't come up with this picture. I have the source there. This is from a book called Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. Has anyone else read this book or heard of it? It's so good. I do recommend it. I read it in my doctoral program. In a nutshell, just the concept of essentialism, you can ask yourself. So sometimes when I feel very overwhelmed, I have like not just a regular daily or weekly or monthly calendar. I actually will have an hourly calendar. So when I feel very overwhelmed for the entire week, I'll sit down and chart out literally what each of my hours look like. I don't always feel the need to do that each week, but sometimes I do. And I find when I have too many projects that I'm wanting to do that more. But basically the concept of essentialism is when you practice essentialism, you'll be like this diagram or image here on the right, where you're just focusing on one thing and you have greater energy that you can devote to it. So when people hear my name, Leslie Bross, and if they've read some of my articles, I hope that they would know, oh, Leslie supports young adults with autism and their transition to adulthood, employment, community integration. But if I say yes to too many projects, maybe something with younger, even really important opportunities, like consulting work or writing a blog or magazine article, you get approached to do so many different things. If I say yes to too many things, then my energy starts to look like this. And also my focus can also wane. You only have so many hours in the day and so, much energy to give. And certainly related to deep thinking, more intellectual type energy, I really find I'm a morning person. I can really only do, scholarly writing up until maybe about noon or 1 in the day. This depends on what's happening that day. But if you're talking about not only just regular energy, but intellectual thinking energy, then you really have to guard it. And so I will truly ask myself sometimes, is this essential? Does this contribute to my defined research agenda? And if the answer is no, then I could pass on that opportunity. This also relates to the concept of saying no gracefully, which is absolutely a skill to develop in academia. There's just no way that you can say yes to everything. So you have to be able to say no gracefully. Know who to ask for help. So I have some informal and formal mentors at UNC Charlotte. One of my strongest mentors, in my doctoral program was my academic advisor, of course. And then now as early career faculty, I'd say it's my department chair, Dr. Charlie Wood. And so it's like, I know who to ask for help. And then recognizing again that your time, energy, and your mental capacities is your most valuable contribution. So sometimes, like consulting work, for example, I'd almost rather have my time and my energy over the monetary. There's no dollar amount kind of placed upon that. So anyway, so I hope this little image is helpful to you. And then you can also, I do truly ask myself, what is essential? What is essential today? Sometimes when I'm, planning my day, how to live my day. So thanks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so related to this topic, I have a couple of different things. The first one is knowing how to market yourself. And that has become, I think, increasingly important and popular because of our need to disseminate our work and our research, right? Like Dr. Cox was saying, we're millennials, we're starting to realize like a lot of what we do has stayed in this ivory tower and we need to get it out there to teachers. There's so much research that goes unnoticed. So a lot of us are trying to, market ourselves. And I've tried since my PhD program to do this through social media. I have a Twitter account that is mostly professional. I do share a little bit about my personal life, but not like on my Instagram. I also recently, because of everything going on with Twitter, I created an Instagram account that is also professional. And in there, I share more like what I'm reading or things that I'm doing. I'll share like little like ideas for parents because I do parent implemented interventions. So things like that. So know that, start by creating, I was gonna say Twitter. There's still a lot of things good on Twitter. I've met a lot of great people on Twitter, but it's problematic a little right now, but I'm still there. Then conferences. And conferences, we talked about, I think Dr. Cox and I talked about at the conference, at the DABB conference, about how it's this whole thing where you have to pay for it. You're expected to go, but as a doc student, you don't get a lot of funding for it, right? If your advisor has some funding, or if your department offers funding, or if you apply for a grant, you get that money and you get that opportunity, but it's kind of expected for you to learn and market yourself and go to these presentations. So that's one area of the hidden curriculum that I had to try really hard to balance, like how do I still reach out to people and go to these conferences? And then half of that problem, came because of COVID. I couldn't even go to conferences. So how do I meet other people that are doing this? And that's where I went back to social media and I started a peer mentoring group with other doc students at the time. And that has transitioned to an early career peer mentoring and writing group. So we meet twice a week. We write together over Zoom. There's people all over the country. And then every 2 or 3 weeks, we just get together and we just chat and we peer mentor each other. So I have a mentoring map here that I found on the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. And that was given to me, was recommended to me by Dr. Boveda, who is at Penn State now. But she showed me this, and it talks about how important it is not to have just 1 or 2 mentors like Dr. Bross mentioned, but having different mentors that fill different buckets in your life. Professional development, emotional support, your intellectual community, people that can hold you accountable for different things, right? All of these people, you might have different people that fill those buckets and help you in different moments of your life. And then briefly, I'm going to talk about my other area, which is peaking experiences based on your goals. So think broadly now at any point in your doc program, what is it that you want? In R1 programs, you are pretty much, always pushed towards a career as a researcher as well. But I have a really good friend who she knew from the get-go, she wasn't in an R1, but she knew she wanted to be a clinical faculty. She liked teaching, she didn't like research, she did the research to graduate, but she wanted to teach. And now that she's in a mostly clinical position, she has found the joy in publishing a little bit, but it's not expected. So she loves that. So think about what you want to do early on and get experiences based on that. If you know you want to be at a 4-4 teaching position, find those experiences, ask people. I didn't know this. I didn't know I could ask for those experiences. But now I know people ask like, oh, I want to teach this course, or are there more experiences? Or even contacting other universities that might have classes for you to adjunct, for you to get those teaching experiences. Same with research, reaching out not only to people in your department, but people at other universities that do the same work that you do or that you cite. Do you have any opportunities for me to be involved with your research? I would love to learn more about that. They might say yes, they might say no, but usually I feel like all of us are pretty open to having more people help us with research. And similarly with service, kind of like Deidre right now, she's involved with service to the profession by being the student representative at DAD. Find opportunities with your mentors or with your advisors to review articles, or to see how they review articles, or to be in different committees. So that has also helped me now that I have transitioned to a faculty position.
That is all really great advice. I will just add, sorry, that I came from, when I was at Florida State, I had a very wonderful opportunity to be funded on an OSEP grant. And so I was very fortunate, and I was able to take advantage of many conferences and explore different things. I then took a position. I am currently at Eastern Michigan University, which is a heavy teaching load. I teach a 4-4. And so for me, fitting in scholarship looked different for these first 3 years. I had been told repeatedly, know who you are, stay your lane. Like Dr. Bross said, you want to be known for that thing. But when push came to shove, if I needed to teach a 4-4 and still get published, moving in the middle of a pandemic, as someone who does intervention-based research, and the schools here in Michigan were still closed, I really had no choice but to, branch out and do something different. So I will say that sometimes life throws you curveballs, and part of the joy, and we'll talk about this next in terms of being trained as a critical thinker, is you have a little bit of luxury to, explore, and maybe you focus on the methodology piece, maybe you focus on something else that is of interest. But that was very hard for me, because I think all of us would encourage you to be true to yourself and find that area of focus that's very important in academia, but also acknowledging the reality of sometimes it does not work exactly that way. With all that being said, I was going to talk specifically about the way that I found my doc program in particular to be really helpful. Was when I attended conferences, the expectation was the very first conference I went to, or the first year of conferences I went to, the focus was on exploring the options of conferences, recognizing that each one offers slightly different topics, like who it pulls, and the scholars that are more likely to attend different conferences varies more than I would have thought it does. The people who attend can be very different. You will start to hear from people that they have their favorites. They have ones that they feel like they have to go to every year, versus there are others that they will go when they can, or every so many years. And then each conference has different priorities. So who are they trying to attract and attend to? And often that is intentional, so that there is not as much overlap. And so being like cued into that, I think, is very important, and understanding where are the SIGs most important versus the presentations are most important, versus there are conferences I've gone to that I've heard from colleagues, they only went to a couple of sessions because really their focus there was being part of the groups and attending those membership groups. And that is truly what they were there for. So knowing that that is part of it, and understanding that each one kind of has its own culture. It's really interesting to me. I'm part of a research lab with Deidre, actually, and we come back and kind of debrief afterwards. And each of us has a very different, experience, because we each come from our own positionality and preferences and all of the things. And so knowing which one fits you the best and what fills you in certain ways, I think also can be really important. So that, like, I know when I go to AERA, I'm going for a very specific reason, and it is completely different than when I go to DAD. Like, they are two different things, and accepting that, I think, made this easier. After you attend and kind of get the lay of the land, the next would be present some kind of collaborative work. If you are helping an advisor or if you are working with colleagues, there are always people who are looking to collaborate. So if you don't have someone at your home institution, but you read someone's work that sounds fascinating, reach out to them. I love when someone sends me an email and is like, hey, this is so cool, I want to look at math reasoning. So I strongly encourage, if you don't have someone there that wants to do the kind of work that you're interested in, send an email. It is absolutely worth it. And then last but not least, present work that you lead, whether it is independently. I know that most of us don't do independent work at this point, but if you are leading it and you are the one taking the reins for it, it will help you when you go to the next stages. And now it's all on your plate and you have to figure out from beginning to end how you get from the beginning of thoughts of an idea all the way through, disseminating that research in many different ways. I will also say that there are many, many options, even in our teeny little sliver of a field, and they are very different. And even within CEC, there are state conferences, there are divisions, each of the divisions has a conference, there's the national conference. So there are many opportunities out there, and being aware of some of those different things, I think, is important, because while I think a niche is very valuable. Like, I love DAD. I will go to every DAD conference I can because it just fills me and I feel at home there. But I also really try and force myself and challenge myself to go to other places that I might not feel as comfortable, because it gets my work in front of people who would usually not see it. So I force myself to go to NCTM every couple of years because I want to engage in an intellectual conversation with people about math instruction for students with disabilities. And that's an intentional choice that I make. So whatever way you're kind of find your safe home and try and branch out, I guess, is my overall takeaway.
All right. So before I hand it over to Dr. Bhana for our discussion of our third bucket, trained as a critical thinker, I had a couple people messaging me privately about swag, which I put in the chat, which is a great, I'm not going to, I guess, organization, but it's not like an official organization that me and another doc student from Texas A&M co-lead together. We're going on 2 years of leading that. Our writing group, it's of doc students from education, special ed, psychology, all over across the United States that come together for accountability. If you're interested, I'm going to put my email in the chat. Just shoot me an email and I will put you on our list. I'll send you our informational email, and then you can get plugged in based on the capacity and the level of support that you want or need, and whatnot. So hopefully that answers a little bit of the questions, but I'm going to go ahead and send it back for our third bucket.
So this final one is thinking as a critical thinker, I believe, or maybe I butchered that. Sorry about that. I have 2 things here that I wanted to talk to you about that were hidden, part of the hidden curriculum to me when I first started. Teaching and doing things related to teaching independently. So because I was at Penn State, I only had limited opportunities to teach a course. And when I did those teaching opportunities, I was given a syllabus and I was given resources and I was given PowerPoint, right? So they were focused on me working and learning how to, work the room and work with the students and do the grading. But I didn't get a lot of information on crafting a syllabi, selecting textbooks for asynchronous classes, what needs to be included in modules, how do I prepare modules? So I've had to find a lot of resources surrounding that on my own. My peer mentors have helped me a lot. because we've been able to exchange ideas, exchange resources, help each other out. So find those people. I would say, again, find your tribe, find people that are kind of graduating with you in the same general, part of their career with you. But also there are resources on campus typically. Like there's usually like a teaching center or other faculty members that have been there longer that can help you with those things. They might give you like an example syllabi that you can start, working from. And don't reinvent the wheel your first year. That's my biggest advice too. You're gonna have so many things to do. You're gonna have to prep 2, 3, 4 courses, depending on where you are. I am in an institution where I have a 3-3 load. So I had to do, my first year, pretty much I had to prepare at least 4 or 5 courses. I was able to negotiate having fewer preps. So that's something you should know about as well. Even if you go to a teaching institution or a institution that has a teaching heavier load, even if you have to teach, you can negotiate fewer preps so that you can teach the same course 2 or 3 times a year or different sections of the same course. And that takes away a lot of your time. That frees up that time that we need to do research, which goes into my second point, starting your own research, no matter where you are. Again, my institution, it's a small liberal arts college in Western New York. It's not upstate, it's Western New York. But we still have internal grants. We have summer grants. We have small research initiation grants, and I've applied for those. And because we are a smaller institution, they're easier to get. I was able to fund one of my studies. I was able to pay participants a small stipend for participating in my studies, in one of my studies with that money. I'm also using available data. I'm using data that I have from when I was in grad school to polish some papers and send them to publication. They might not go to, my ideal journal, but they get published, and that helps me, has helped me learn, the pipeline of how things work and get that information that's also really important out there. I've also done some collateral analyses from single case data or some other data that I have. So even if that's your goal, right? Like, even though I am at a smaller institution right now, I want to keep my options open. I'm okay with going to an R2 and R1 at some point. So I've kept publishing and I've kept, involved with my organizations, and that's okay. That's possible. So, collaborate with other people, write conceptual papers, stay involved, go to conferences, and all of that will help you stay engaged as an academic, and, help you expand your knowledge and help you move on if you want to, move up in your institution or go to other institutions.
So my quote here, expect to continue learning. I laugh because my family does not come from academia at all. So anytime I speak to either of my parents about my work or what I do, I think there's just kind of a cloud over it. They think of it as just teaching when I was teaching, and they don't understand. So when I attend things that are more learning, my dad's like, okay, but you have the terminal degree. Like, why are you still doing all of these things? And we constantly have to have this conversation. And I try and explain it to him in the way that I explain to students, right, who are working to become teachers. We are never going to know everything. You always have the opportunity to learn. And so if you go into a job thinking that, or if you go into a program, any academic program, and you think that you're going to learn everything within that academic program to be as successful as you want to be at the next stage, it's very unlikely to come true. There is no program that is going to fully prepare you to do that. So if you go into it though, thinking I'm going to learn the tools that I need to be successful so that I can continue to grow, I think that is the message that I try and send to my pre-service teachers, right? I am never going to be able to give you every single skill you need. I'm teaching a math class right now to be able to teach K through 12 math content. It's impossible. But I can give you the skills to be able to discern what is good evidence-based mathematics instruction. How do you know? How do you monitor it? And really analyze and engage in conversations with other people about that. So I try and take that to heart for myself as well. And in doing so, take advantage of, there are so many opportunities that our field offers to encourage us to continue learning, because science is ever evolving. We never know everything. That's the reason I hope that most of us got into this, is so that we can understand more and we can do better. And in order to do that, we have to keep growing too. So some of the things that I've taken advantage of that have been extremely helpful to me, I did an IES single case research design advanced institute over the summer at University of Wisconsin-Madison with Dr. Malachek and Dr. Farron. And it was just amazing. And I did single case research as a doctoral student. It is the majority of the design studies that I've used in my publications. So I felt like I had a relatively solid grasp, but I learned a ton from that experience as well, and was able to collaborate with other people who use single case in really different ways than I do, and could learn from them as well. And then I did another IES program for smart designs, very different, but again, it was a design that was new to me. So the way that I engaged with that was very different than the single case one. And I think that that is helpful as well. And then I did an academic service learning course at my institution. They offered a course release, and I applied for it, and I learned about academic service learning from a different fields concept of it, and got to engage in some conversations about how we might be able to use academic service learning in the field of teacher education in particular, and what that might look like at our institution, and started forming relationships with some local community members, which was very unique and wonderful. And then there are all kinds of learning opportunities at each institution. So finding out what they have to offer and taking advantage of the ones that are meaningful to you. One that I have done each year is a teaching conference, because it forces me to sit down and start pulling out my syllabi and looking at the notes that I left myself the year before. And that is just an effective thing for me to do, but finding that for yourself is also super helpful. There are lots of informal opportunities. I still personally struggle with imposter syndrome all of the time. And so it is very helpful for me to stay connected with other colleagues, particularly colleagues whom I have a tremendous deal of respect for, knowing and hearing from them that I am not alone, that they, don't think that they know everything, even though I'm looking at them thinking, you know everything. But there's all kinds of ways to collaborate with them. So I've done reading groups with colleagues. I've done course development groups where we're all teaching a similar course, and we just get on to FaceTime for a couple of hours and throw out ideas and share syllabi. And people are so eager and collaborative, and many people miss that from their doc program days. So I have found particularly early career people really want to have that connection. And then last but not least, part of learning is day to day, things are going to happen, and you're going to realize like, oh, I should probably figure out how to do that. I've had some extremely difficult conversations that have had to occur over the last 3 years that I didn't feel prepared to have. And so making use of different resources on campus, we have an Office of Wellness and the Ombudsman, and I have had to push myself to try and find out what to do the next time so that I feel more prepared, and recognize that it was okay that I didn't know what to do in the moment. I did the best that I could, and then I learned so that I can try and do better in the future. And I would say same with mentorship. It was something that I don't feel prepared to do, but I personally feel it is so critical. And I received such amazing mentorship, and I attribute any success I have to those mentors that I've had. So it's something that I want to learn more about, and I get feedback from people so that I can try and be a better mentor in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Cox. My just last few points, we're kind of winding down here. To develop yourself as a scholar, yeah, as the other panelists said, exploring a variety of different methodologies. I too was trained primarily as a single case researcher, and that's primarily what I feel comfortable with, to be, fully transparent. But, I've also conducted qualitative and then also survey studies since my doctoral training. And so for those projects, I read a lot, and I also collaborated with people who, well, they felt most comfortable with qualitative research or survey studies. And that so that we had my, kind of areas of growth were their areas of strength and vice versa. And so recognizing I have some really nice colleagues that we just really complement one another nicely according to our strengths related to different methodologies. I think it's also important to continue to connect with your target population. So my target population is young adults with autism, I would say about ages 18 to 26. And so here in the Charlotte area, I collaborate with a nonprofit organization called Autism After 18. And so just, interacting with those young adults helps me think of new research questions and project ideas. I invite them to come and speak to my classes. And so that's also embedding opportunities across teaching and research. And then again, just focusing, the voices of autistic people in the research development and thinking of different ideas rather than just something that I want to do or that I think is a cool idea, but rather is truly perhaps a need to a young adult with autism with whom I'm working or to that community-based organization can be, a better approach to develop different research studies. And then also, of course, staying current with relevant literature and current issues or trends. So just updates to the single case research design standards, and then also just relevant systematic reviews in my area of inquiry. So a lot of my earlier work, for example, was like all on job skill training. And then people have, rightfully critique some of that. Well, perhaps there's other areas of need beyond just simply training autistic employees for job skills. Maybe the employers could be trained, or maybe some more systematic approaches or different dependent variables such as hours worked per week or wages that the individual with autism earns. So it's just continuing to read articles in my topic area, but that still critiquing my earlier work. And so that I can push myself forward, and just do the next study, even better, and continuing on with that line of inquiry. So I hope that helps a few points. Yeah, I think I'll turn it back over to Deidre for our last questions from everybody.
Yes, so I was told that the questions that have been asked in Jamboard, our panelists have been trying to answer those as we've been going forward. So as we wrap up our last couple minutes here, I sent out like a quick 3-question survey for you guys to tell me which questions you wanted prioritized to the panelists. So for the last couple moments of our time here, I'm going to ask the panelists these 3 questions. And if anybody has any others, again, throw them in the Jamboard or put them in the chat, and we'll wind down our last few moments together. So related to being trained as a critical thinker, just because we just came off that topic area, to our 3 panelists, how would you describe the mentor style you were provided with as a doctoral student? And how would you describe your current mentoring style? How has this changed since you graduated from your program?
I can answer that one briefly. My mentor at the University of Kansas was hyper professional at all times, but I also felt that he cared about me and that I could absolutely approach him. And so we communicated frequently through text, but then we followed still, all procedures and guidelines at our university. So I try and model that with my doctoral students, that they can absolutely come to me at any time. I am available and going to support you while still having these like high standards of rigor. So being approachable, but also rigorous.
I had 2 wonderful mentors at Florida State who were very, very different. I would say one was the questioner. She was the one who consistently asked me why I was doing what I was doing and did that make sense, and really encouraged me to critically analyze everything all of the time. And she did it to herself too. So that is who she was. I knew she was invested because of that. The fact that she constantly wanted to see things and get engaged with them in that way. She was also extremely supportive of whatever I wanted to do. So she listened. If I wanted to take the study in a different way, part of that critical analysis was, tell me why. If I think you should do this, if you disagree with me, I want you to tell me why. And so she really pushed me to be independent. My other mentor was much more of a model for me. Her work was closer to my work, and she had a style that was very different than every other faculty member that was at our university. And so I think I would describe her as the like quintessential model. Like she just represented the adult that I wanted to be one day, which is, I mean, I guess my personal style right now, honestly, is a work in progress. I am finding that different people respond very differently to different, like the same thing. So I can be the same person, and people whom I'm trying to mentor will respond extremely differently. So I'm trying to figure out, does that mean that I should be more attentive to them and adjust, or should I be me and then they get the benefit of different mentorship styles like I did? And I don't know that I have the answer for that. So I'm still learning.
Do you want me to answer it? Yeah.
You can if you'd like, or I could give you the next question and you could jump start that question.
I think Dr. Cox covered it because it.
Perfect. So the next question I'm going to ask is related to our first bucket of the work-life balance. And I think it'd be a good thing to end on before I share out our contact information, is what points in your doctorate program did you celebrate, and what would you tell us to celebrate as we go throughout our doctoral program? How should we intentionally do that? I think she's frozen.
I think Dr. Bhana is frozen. Okay. I guess I can go first. I was going to type it in the chat, but I would say celebrate anything that was hard for you. So if there was a certain class, if there was a particular test, if there was, for me, like going to conferences and talking to people, I'm very much an introvert, and it takes a lot of energy to do that. And then I sit back and psychoanalyze everything that I've said for days afterwards. So it is exhausting for me, but also something that I know is really important and something that my mentor to this day tells me I have to do. So anytime I, go out of my way to make some kind of social overture to a person, I try and celebrate that in some way, shape, or form, because that is hard for me. So I would say celebrate anything that you intentionally take the time to say, I did that. That was hard and I did it, and I'm proud of myself.
Dr. Bross, do you have anything to add?
I was gonna say, every time you meet a deadline, yeah. So especially if you have a big deadline, like a, portfolio 1, 2, or 3, or dissertation defense, whatever, at your university, whatever program requirements that are those really big ones, certainly pause and celebrate. Submitting a manuscript, submitting a major project for a class. So yeah, definitely take time and pause, and knowing yourself and knowing what fills your bucket, that you're able to celebrate and enjoy in the way that brings you the most joy in your life.
Absolutely. So in the writing group that I co-lead, we always start off every one of our sessions by having people share about their celebrations and accomplishments. So for us, I want to encourage you all to celebrate those milestones as you go forward. Dr. Bhana, would you like to add anything about celebrating milestones as you're going throughout your doctorate program as we wrap up here?
Oh yeah, sure. Celebrate everything. Celebrate an R&R, celebrate then when it gets, accepted, celebrate when it gets published. We don't get enough positive reinforcement in this field, and we have to give it to ourselves. I think that's one thing I like from Twitter, that it has shown me to celebrate a lot of those things. I think Esther Lindstrom, she does a great job at it, and she posts a picture of a pie she bakes or she cooks or she buys every time she gets a paper published, which is great. But not only that, like little things, like when the students tell you that you did great, or that they enjoyed it, or something that feels personally like and exciting. And like you said, Deidre, we do in our writing and peer mentoring group, we also do glows and growth. One thing that we love and that we are proud of, and then one thing that we are struggling with. So you make sure you do that mentally, even, or with like your group.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up for it's 3 o'clock already, I just want to say thank you to our panelists again, and thank you for everybody joining. This is our contact information. Feel free to find us on social media or reach out via email. And then here is the next parts of the DAD series. So upcoming on May 15th, led by Dr. Root and Dr. Brock, we'll be discussing logic models and theories of change. So keep an eye out on your emails. That'll come out for you to sign up if you'd like to join. Otherwise, everybody have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thanks for joining us. Reach out if you need anything or want to discuss further.
Thank you. Thank you, Deidre. Yeah.